What's up, guys? Welcome back to another week, another episode of Pave the Way. So glad that you're joining us. As always, like, subscribe. Thanks for being here. And Brent and I, we kind of made a decision. We're about to start a little series on leadership. And so leadership is something that's huge for us. Obviously, we're leaders of our organization. We try to be leaders at home. We talk about being good in all these areas of our lives. And it takes being a leader in each area of life and showing up every day to accomplish anything in those areas. So Brent, I know you were going to say a little bit about what your heart was with this leadership stuff. But also just tell him, man, where has leadership taken you?
Absolutely. And I think, for me, we've kind of talked about it. And as you know, Alex and I are very fortunate to serve in our church, and we're in this, discipleship program where we're helping, walk through life with 6 men right now. And there's a group of over 30 men in our church going through it. And what I've kind of learned and been made aware of through that, through FCA, through really all the ministry stuff that we do is the need for leadership, especially for us men. I feel like a lot of the problems in the world that we're seeing right now is because men aren't being leaders anymore. And for me, what can you do about that? I think, one, you got to lead yourself well, but then let's start talking about leadership. Let's rip the Band-Aid off and start talking about why we as men as a whole aren't leading our families well, aren't leading in our jobs well, aren't leading in so many ways. The situation that we have going on right now with kids growing up without a dad, I mean, it's a pandemic. It truly is. And it goes back to leadership. Like dads, men aren't wanting to be the leaders in their family. So I think this series, or whatever you want to call it, that we're going to embark on in leadership is really just from a stance of truly wanting to help make it one person, one situation better each day. Like try to get better. And
to tag on to that too, it's like we as leaders of our organization and leaders of our lives and leaders of this world, or whatever you want to call it, community leaders, whatever sector we're in, we typically try to lead it. And so for me, that's really important because my job and my goal is to help other people become leaders.
Yes.
Like I lead them, and then I expect them wholeheartedly to lead someone else, and then them to lead someone else. And not only do I want to pass that down around the people in my circles, but I also want that to pass down generationally to my family.
Yes.
Like I want my son to lead his family. I want his, whether he has kids or daughters, I can't, only God knows. But I'm just saying, I want them to be leaders, and it stems from this. Maybe they'll pull this video up 40 years from now and be like, man, that's something you can do right there,
Yes.
And so let's start. You mentioned something good, and we'll kind of take off with that. Talk about leading yourself.
Yes.
Talk about leading yourself, man. What do you do when you wake up in the morning? For me, it's like, let's win the day, let's win the morning, then we're going to win the day. Yes. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do, I don't know how you guys are. This is how my mind works. When I wake up, I don't know if it's years of habit, I don't know what it is, but I have a tendency of when I wake up, I basically need to get my brain moving in a positive direction. I can easily wake up and have negative thoughts hit me within the first 30 seconds. So what do? I wake up and I get in the shower and I immediately try to meditate, like think about what I'm thinking about. And then the next thing I do is I read scripture. That's basically every day. I do that every day. And that's how I lead my day, how I lead myself to the day, and how it starts my day. And then after that, everything is usually lighter.
Yes.
And every day I don't have the negative thought. It's just when it does, this is how I'm leading myself. So I know I have this thing going on. And so this is how I lead past it. I'm getting past it by doing this.
Yes.
And
I love that you immediately go into the Word every day, because that has been my habit as well. My wife's habit. We read the Bible together now in the mornings, and that's so critical for our life. And I think when you lead yourself that way, you're saying to the Lord, you lead me. Because that's ultimately where we want to get in our leadership, is to where we're letting Him lead, and then we're being a good leader because we're following Him. That's the point. So I love that you made that point in the beginning. Like, that's so good. So for me, it's the same thing. It's like getting in the right stance, the right mindset every day. Because if you're not in the right mindset, if you're not really thinking the way you should be thinking, or prioritizing the things you should be prioritizing, you're not going to be the leader that you need to be. So it's critical that you, whatever it is for you, you get in that good routine and get yourself into the right mindset every day as you approach your leadership.
As you really try to live up to your full potential, like as you're trying to live up to your full potential, you'll notice like, hey, when I don't read this, I'm not living up to my full potential because I'm angry until 9:30 a.m. Or some people tell me they can't read when they first wake up, so they need to do a physical exercise first. Like, dude, if that's you, like by all means. But for me, like sometimes I am. By the time I shower, sometimes I'm a little like tired still. I literally go outside and I do like 30 jumping jacks. I don't know. It shakes me up. That's just
Wakes you up.
that's the details, boys and girls. That's the details. But it's literally, that's how I start the day, leading myself. And that usually transitions into like a journaling, a physical workout and a journaling. And then after that, it starts like, basically I'm ready to have conversations with anyone about anything.
Yes.
And it kind of starts our days going.
Yes.
Do you have anything else that, I mean, this is all about morning routine, but when it comes to leading yourself, this is what I do every day.
Yes, and I think servant leadership is something that I want to talk about in this stance, is because like once you get your brain in the right posture, your day started the right way, you're leading yourself the right way, then you got to flip the switch into servant leadership. And that's where a lot of men are missing the mark. That's where we as men, we don't want to be servant leaders. We want to be leaders. And we have this negative mindset. I think a lot of people have this negative mindset where they think if you're the leader, that everybody under you is just doing everything for you and you're not having to do anything. That's kind of like the king mentality.
I laugh.
You know what I mean? Like the king mentality, like I'm the king and people are fanning me with leaves and people are feeding me and I just hang out and I'm great. And that's the kind of leadership we want. But we don't want to do the servant leadership. We don't want to be the leaders who are in front of the sled pulling it with the team instead of sitting on the sled being pulled by the team. But for me and the way that we run our organizations, man, I've learned really quickly, if you're not working, if you're not putting your effort into the business as well or into the goal or whatever it is, the people around you are eventually going to get tired of that.
Oh, absolutely.
So servant leadership is so important. So instead of saying, what can these people do for me? Or what can my wife do for me? Or what can my kids do for me? Start saying, what can I do for them? How can I lead them in a positive way? How can I be a positive impact on their day? And that's what I think has been a huge shift in our businesses and everything, is taking that approach of servant leadership.
Absolutely. And going back to what you just said, you know, instead of saying like, what can my kids do for me? What can my wife do for me? What can these people do for me? You know, why don't you take ownership and say, this is what I had to do. This is from personal experience. Instead, you take ownership and you grab the hand of whoever it is that's hanging out down here, your wife, whoever's like bothering you or whoever's, and you pick them up and you place them where you are in your life. And, you know, to tie that back into servant leadership, once we do all that stuff in the morning and my mind feels right and I'm ready to like get after it that day, you flip the switch and you're ready to go serve your team, man, because the team that we have, you know, not only are they a great group, you know, it's a bunch of young guys, and then we got Brent, Rob, and I, and then we got Miss Kelly, and it's a great team of people. Like I appreciate every single one of them. We got Neil, and I appreciate working with them and everything. But basically after my time, it's time to serve them. It's time for them to be happy. It's time for them to, what do they need? How can I progress them today? How can I get them better? What do they need to learn? And that's just like what I think about all day. Like where do I have to be? And like, who can I get better right now? Yeah. And so that's part of the servant leadership too, is to say, okay, well, guess what? The time for me is nights and weekends. The time for me is this time. The time for me is the time I have scheduled for the time for me. And the time for them is 9 to 5 or whatever it is you got going on.
That's right.
And that's hard to do, especially a business owner. When you first start that, you're like, man, I'm about to be so free. I'm about to be able to do whatever I want. I'm about to have so much money. Going to do it. But really, at the end of the day, if you do whatever you want, you don't show up to work for a year, your team's probably not going to respect you or want to work with you. So you've served them none.
Yes, and leading at work is something that's so critical for us. Like that is a big part of what we do, our work. We treat our work like a ministry. We really buy into our guys. We really care about their growth. So leading at work for us is critical. Wherever you're at, you may not be a leader in your work right now. You may not have that title. But what I'm telling you is leadership doesn't require a title. You don't need a title to be a good leader. Good leaders come from the ground up. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. Joseph, his situation. Daniel, his situation. So many guys led without a title, and then eventually they got the title.
Absolutely.
So that's where you got to be in your work environment. How can you better the company? How can you look at like, hey, I've got an owner who's trying to make money. How can I be a leader within his organization? And eventually you're going to get promoted. Eventually you're going to get that. But it's so critical that you start with that servant leadership mindset. Leading at work, and then I want to take this to the house. I really want to take this to the home, because I think, again, talking about the situations and the problems that we're seeing in society of divorce being rampant, you know, all these negative things that are happening, I think it's because men aren't doing what they should do at home.
It's real. And maybe, I mean, we could say, talking about work, like maybe we're spending too much time at work. Maybe there's times where we need to say, hey, the work needs to be put down. The goals need to be accomplished. Yes, they will get accomplished, but I just need to go home for an hour. That's all I got to do is just go show my face, and everybody at home, I've had to live it. And so when it comes to, because we try to use leadership is like a lifestyle for us, man. It's like I lead myself, I lead the people at work, I lead at home, I lead at church. I just try to lead everywhere I go. And what I've learned is that as long as you're always trying your best to lead, you're normally going to get the most opportunities as long as your eyes are open. And when, like you said, like we're going to go back to the house and how you can be a leader at home. But if you don't wake up every day and lead yourself, whether your title says doctor, manager, lawyer, I don't care what your title says, you're a leader of yourself. Yes. You lead every day, you live out your values and you're leading with them. If you look at homeless people every day and you say, man, that guy's a piece of crap, I can't believe he doesn't have a job and he's just such a loser. Let's just take that to the next step. Like, I wonder how he got in that situation. I wonder if I could love that guy. And those questions, dude, I had to change how I was leading myself before I even started asking those questions. That's just one example. So taking it back to when you get home, dude, when I get home, there's so many times, I'm not perfect. There's so many times where business is at home for me. Like I go home and my phone starts ringing at 6 o'clock and it rings till 7:30 sometimes, but I have to put the phone down. I have to spend the quality time. I have to hang out with my son. He just said, like, kids are growing up without dads. How do you expect your kids to know how to accomplish great things if you don't hang out with them?
That's right.
How can you expect them to know, how to love someone, how to be there emotionally, we're literally just discipling and leading those kids too. So for me, if someone doesn't want to raise their kids, by all means, there's probably someone else out there that will, but to me, you need to take ownership and you shouldn't even start the journey if you're not willing to take that ownership.
Exactly. And that's what we're seeing is crushing the society that we live in. That's where all these, I don't mean to get here, but like the gender situations we got going on, all these weird situations stem back to lack of leadership in the household, stem back to just letting other people lead your kids. How many people let other people, they're dependent on the teacher or their coach or whoever, anybody, will somebody please lead my kid because I don't want to. I just want to hang out, watch TV, go to work, hang out with my buddies. I don't want to lead my kid. And then, dude, that's how we get into the situation that we're in today.
Some of it goes back to mindsets that are like Tyreek Hill, man, he's super famous right now. He's got like 4 girls pregnant in a year. I mean, he's got the money to support them all, but like, how many of them are going to grow up with like? And dude, shout out to I didn't know my biological dad, and I had a stepfather that became my dad, and dude, he stepped up and like led our family he's still leading it for 30 years, and it's so hard not to get emotional, but it's just like, dude, I just know that we're speaking also to guys like that. There's guys out there that are such good leaders that they're going to lead kids that aren't even theirs.
Yes.
And I just want to give y'all a shout out too, because like the world needs these men, because we got guys like Tyreek Hill, Dennis Rodman, his dad. I read something about him that said he was trying to have like 30 kids with like 30 different women.
And I think he's relationship with any of them.
And I think he succeeded and Dennis Rodman, look at Dennis Rodman.
Yeah, had no relationship with any of them.
Yeah, that's got nothing to do with like, his gender or his sexuality or anything. I'm just saying, like, do you think Dennis Rodman had mental things growing up? Like, he absolutely did.
Correct.
Absolutely. And then you can go watch his 30 for 30 if you want to see the details. But
yes. And it's so sad to me, the situation that we're in today is that, because I see it. I see people broken. I see people just without that leadership in their life. So my plea to you is, if you're listening to this, like, do some self-reflection in your life. Like, are you leading yourself in a positive way? Are you leading those around you? Would the people in your circle say that you're a leader or a follower? Would the people in your circle say that you're a positive influence on their life? Or just like, yeah, he's a good friend, or a negative influence in your life? Because a lot of times, and we say it all the time at work, you're either a positive leader or you're a negative leader.
Yeah,
there's really no middle ground. You're either leading people in, mid lifestyles or mediocre leadership in your family, or you're a good leader and you're pushing them to positivity. So what are you choosing in your life? Do some self-reflection. And I think when you look in the mirror, a lot of times, if you're not leading yourself well, you're not going to lead your family well.
Yeah.
So you can't miss that part. So getting to the home nucleus, it's so important that you're in the right mindset with your wife even. Like, what are the little things that you can do for your wife to make her life a little bit easier?
Yeah, I know for me, like, if I ever leave the house and it's like, man, that conversation didn't go the way you wanted it to, but I got to be here at 9, so I got to book out the door at 8:50, and it's like you don't get to handle or solve the deal. Like, you want to solve it. You want to get the meeting over with just to have that conversation. Like, basically being good at home is going to make all other areas of your life good. And we're just encouraging you the same as always to become a role model in all areas of your life. Like, he said self-reflect. Ask some enlightening questions. Like we're business partners. I ask myself all the time, what kind of business partner am I? Like, what kind of husband am I? What kind of son am I? What kind of church member am I? What kind of person am I? And those questions, like when you sit down and journal on them, sometimes you don't like the answer, but they help you change. They help you get in the better spot. And
self-awareness.
It's self-awareness. And so let's go back to the marriage part. And this is not to condemn anyone that's gotten a divorce. You know, like each situation, you're in your own personal world. Like there's adultery, there's all kinds of situations, there's abuse, there's all kinds of situations out there. But for the everyday guy that's in the relationships, like the marriages that we're in, where that stuff isn't happening, I have to make a choice every day to love my wife. And to me, God honors that love that I give my wife. Okay? So why are men getting divorced? Why do they make a decision to marry someone and then choose to not make that commitment 5 to 10 years later? Each person's in their own boat, but the way I see it is that they didn't look within. They didn't take blame. They may have played a victim card. It's a bunch of things, but at the end of the day, guys, I don't give myself the option to get a divorce. I look at my wife like once a month and I just laugh and I say, it's funny, we're never getting a divorce. Like, you know, because it's just so far-fetched out of my mind, but how do you get your mind there? How do we as men get our heads there to where we're leading our family and you know that, and everyone in you can be secure in that. Everyone around you can be secure in that.
Yes.
How do you do it?
Dude. Well, I think
for me, it's the word.
That's right. It starts with that, and it starts with choosing to be the leader of your environment, choosing to
take
lead.
The ownership.
Yeah, exactly. Take that ownership, and you got to have passion. You gotta have a lot of things in that. You know, communication is big, listening, speaking. A lot of times when you're the leader, you think that like your way or the highway. Well, that's wrong, guys. That's false. That song, it's a good song, but it's not your way or the highway. That's called dictatorship. That's not called leadership. And we're not dictators, we're leaders. So ultimately, to get leaders to lead other people, and that's a big goal that we have, you have to let them start to lead themselves. So you can't always be my way or the highway. That's terrible leadership. So not only do you have passion, do you communicate well, do you listen, you speak with other people? Like these are real life examples of what you can actually do. Like, do you even listen to your wife?
Those are all areas that you can improve upon and focus on. Everything you just said. You can be more passionate. You can listen better. You can become a better communicator. And this is what I'm talking about with leadership. This is how you start leading. You go, you find out that you can get better at these things, and you go and get better at them. And then you go to your wife, then you go to your husband, then you go to your spouse, then you go to your kids. Over and over, you show up every day consistently and get better at these things. In a year, your wife's gonna be like, holy smokes, I didn't even know I was married to that guy.
Exactly.
Who are you?
And we've seen that happen. I've seen it happen in my life. I've seen it happen in your life. I've seen it happen in people in our sphere of influence's life. Like, truly getting transformation from one step at a time. That's the key. You have to wake up every day. And another thing is like gentleness, patience.
Patience is hard. Those are the harder ones.
Patience is hard.
For me. Like I'm one of the people, like a lot of people love to be told what to do. Dude, I hate being told what to do. I joke, maybe that's why we own businesses. Like I just do. And so when it comes to gentleness and patience, and when it's like, you know, it doesn't even matter. I mean, it's not even a my wife kind of thing. It's a me thing. But you know, if I get home and it's like, hey, you know, do this, I'm like, give me a second. You know, give me a second. And it's like that patience, I have to have it. And if I just got off the phone with somebody and I just lost a deal that was going to pay us, and I immediately have to have that conversation, I have to work on the gentleness. Like I have to be aware all the time, because like in a day of work, dude, if you don't let it, your emotions can do like this. You try to keep them like this because you want to be in control of your emotions. Another way to be a good leader, get in control of those emotions. Yes. We'll talk about that later.
Yes.
But these things, we got to work on them, guys. We got to work on getting better for ourselves. That way we can be better for our families. That way we can be better for our coworkers, for our bosses, for our friends, for our family, for everyone in our lives that we have the luxury and the privilege of influencing.
Yes. And I think the gentleness and the patience, man, is a lot of like, I'm working on that too. Like this stuff, when we talk to you about this, throughout this conversation, I'm being self-aware of things that I need to work on in my life. So don't get it twisted that we got all this figured out. Like this is a daily practice of truly trying to be the best leader that you can possibly be. And I think the gentleness and the patience is something that we as men, dude, think about that in your life. Are you gentle? with your wife when things don't go right, or your kids, or somebody that works for you? Are you that guy who's just an absolute jerk who people are literally scared to mess up around because you're just so whatever opposite of gentle is, you're that. And patience, man. Patience is one of the hardest principles as a leader. Because, dude, there's so many leaders in my life that should have gave up on me, but they were patient, and I've made progress in my life. But, dude, patience is critical. Patience is so critical in this.
Absolutely. And there's different seasons of that patience too. Like sometimes it's as patient, just like letting your kid crawl all over your face for 20 seconds while you're reading him a book. And then sometimes you need patience in the form of like, man, we have a whole month, this bill's due at this time, we got this to figure out, and you just got to be patient. But I tell people all the time here recently, but one thing that always helps me when I become impatient is I just chant to myself, this is the present, this is my moment. This is the present, this is my moment. And it always helps me get centered and come back to now. I come back right now, and now I'm sitting at the table, Brent's, it just makes your brain go away from the thing that's 10,000 leagues away, 3 months down the road, and you just come back to right now. Yes. And it's another way. It's funny because everything we talk about links back to leadership. It's just all this stuff. It's another way to become a better leader. And so, Brent, before we get out of here, man, are there any other areas of life that we're going to be focusing on throughout this leadership journey?
Yeah, I think we really want to unpack leadership deeply. So we may talk about this for a month straight, maybe 2 months, I don't know. But the first topic was servant leadership, because I think that's one of the most important. Are you leading yourself right? And then are you a servant leader? A leader who actually gets in the trenches with your team or whatever that is, because that's the leaders that I want to follow. That's the leader that I want to be.
Yeah.
So, as we get deeper, man, if you've got topics that you want to talk about throughout leadership, we're going to try to unpack it. We're going to bring articles, whatever we got to do to try to impact. If we can impact one person from this podcast to be a better leader, it's going to be a win.
Yeah.
And it's going to be worth it. So as far as servant leadership goes, today's topic, really hone in on, are you being a servant leader?
Yeah.
Are you looking to lead other people with an agenda that is more focused on them than you?
And
that's the best leaders.
And they can tell, man. They can tell when your heart's not out there for them. They can tell when you're going through the motions. They can tell. So I encourage you, start looking in the mirror, gain some self-reflection, gain some introspect, ask enlightening questions, and then go get after it. Go serve the people around you.